Welcome to this week's episode of Being Human. Delighted to say I'm here with Yuri van Geest. He's an author, a speaker. His day job, it seems to me, is helping businesses to scale. He was a co-author of the book Exponential Organizations, which was written a few years back now. And as we were speaking just before we came on air here, so your vision has updated somewhat since you read that book. But that might be a good place to start, is what we mean by an exponential organization. And we can take it from there. You also suggested that we might want to use a visual to help talk people through that. So Yuri, welcome to the show. And I'll bring up a visual for exponential organizations.
Yeah, great. So now basically an exponential organization, we started doing this book 10 years ago. Salim Ismail, me, and also later Mike Malone and Peter Diamandis and Michiel Schumann. So it was a whole team doing this. But an exponential organization is different from, let's say a classic traditional industrial organization who basically work with linear input-output models. While exponential organizations, similar to digital platforms, they are 10x, sometimes 10x more effective, efficient, and faster than classic linear organizations. And the way they do it, in short, is they use different exponential technologies like artificial intelligence, sensors, maybe blockchain, quantum computing in some cases, biotech, nanotech, other robots, drones, to scale, but they also use, and that's quite crucial, new organizational design techniques. So let's say new ways to organize in terms of processes, skills, competencies, KPIs, systems. So basically the key building blocks of organization. So we are witnessing a transformation towards, let's say, a systemic transformation of organizations. The last time was 150 years ago, and we call it an exponential organizations. Now, key examples are the obvious examples of Airbnb and Uber, but there are many others, or let's say Waze or many other companies that we identified 10 years ago, and most of them have been growing exponentially in the last 10 years. And in this slide, you see the 11 characteristics of exponential organizations. It's a synthesis 10 years ago of the key trends back then. Some of the trends were weak signals, some were stronger signals. Let me walk you through them. At the top, we see the MTP, the massive transformative purpose. So how is your company helping to create a better world? Now, it's based on Simon Sinek, the why, but we extended it a little bit more, make it more practical. This is the most important attribute. We have been doing this now for 10 years, implementing this stuff. For nations, corporations, NGOs, governments, individuals. And yeah, it's the most important attribute to become exponential or scalable. On the right side, we see scale as an abbreviation. These are right brain skills to allow for more abundance, creativity, and let's say growth and uncertainty. It's a bit messy. It's the outside of your organization, the front end. And we talk about staff on demand, flexible workforce, community and crowdsourcing, AI. Back then it was quite new, deep learning, machine learning 10 years ago. It just started back then. Now AI, of course, is very dominant. Think about GPT-3, GPT-4 is coming up. That's a massive change for all organizations starting now, right, in the next decades.
What's that? Sorry, talk for people who don't understand that one.
So yeah, go ahead.
Those acronyms again, just for people who are not familiar with those.
Yeah, algorithms. The L is for leverage assets. That means digital platforms. How can you use?
No, I meant the GTP3.
Okay.
GTP3.
Yeah. So within AI, you have a subset algorithms, subset machine learning, subset deep learning. Deep learning used to be the most advanced form of artificial intelligence the last 10 years, and now we have the transformer technology within AI, which is the cutting edge by OpenAI, and the open source with Elon Musk and others, Sam Altman. And they have launched a new tool. It's called ChatGPT. It was launched a few weeks ago, 3-4 weeks ago, and has been the most popular, and highly adopted new tool ever in human history.
Oh wow!
So it basically you can type in what are the future trends of airlines in 2023, and you get a whole report like a consultant for free, and it's 90% accurate. It's mind blowing when you do it for the first time. Now, this is not surprising to me because we have been talking about this for 10 years at Singularity University in the book. But to see it in practice is still quite unreal at first. And then, of course, after a few days, you get used to it. But the thing is, humans are best at being human. So we have to amplify our unique human capabilities compared to or relative to Chat GPT capabilities, which will increase over time. Right? So that to do a segue on this, and this is in line with my vision for 10 years now, I think humans being, also you and me, everybody who's watching this, we need to amplify our right brain skill sets, things that AI cannot copy, things like love, empathy, compassion, wisdom, intuition, right? Intercultural sensitivity, so beauty, sense of beauty. And I think that becomes, of course, imagination, courage, bold innovate, creative thinking in a bold fashion. So that becomes even more important. So if you are, let's say you are a consultant, now we are both to a certain degree consultant. I think the core of your business is to have a vision, a unique vision, because AI is not really able to create a unique, bold vision, right, for the future. It's basically an extrapolation of the past and the present. In many ways. So then we have leverage assets. That's about how can you use the assets of your customers or partners as free input for your organization and business model. I think digital platforms, in some cases like Airbnb and Uber. And then you have engagement. This is how to increase engagement with your employees and your customers using incentive competitions or digital reputational systems. So that's important. And then you have interfaces. These are basically software implementations inside your organization, workflow, also algorithms to process the output of the external attributes, scale into your inside organization. So it's a software interface instead of a human interface. Then you have dashboards that's about objectives and key results, OKRs, a new way to have a daily or weekly stand-up or feedback loop with your employees. So short feedback loops instead of long feedback loops. That's called dashboarding, open and transparent. I think that's quite important as well. Now commonplace as well. Experimentation was about, back then, Lean Startup. It was quite new back then, 1 year old, 2012. Design thinking, service design, and agile combined. It's also quite important, but I think it's out of date a little bit. Well, I can talk about it later. Autonomy is about self-organized teams who have responsibility to make their own decisions in a decentralized fashion. That's a very controversial topic to implement in corporates and in governments. I tried a few times, but I think there's some feedback loop there as well. We can share. And social tools are about ways to disrupt email, because email is out of date. There's email overload. We need new ways to synthesize synchronously in Dropbox or Slack or even more modern tools.
Yeah.
And we learned that you need to become exponential, you need at least 5-6 of these attributes to become scalable and more 10x, basically. And the most important attributes, and now we can talk about this because now we are 10 years further down the road, are the purpose, the MTP, the massive transformative purpose. Algorithms, obviously, AI is super important. Leverage assets and experimentation. And I would say community management, not crowdsourcing, community management, and I would say dashboarding, OKRs in particular companies.
Right.
To really be able to become more successful, basically. Now, so on the left side, you see these internal attributes, not the external attributes. On the left side, internal. And these are ways to control, stabilize your company. So you need the balance between left and right and the purpose. That's also important. And I've also learned in the last few years that you can only implement, let's say, 2 attributes in 1 year, not 4.
Right.
Unless you are a small company, they can do 4. But most companies, I recommend to do 2 in 1 year, and then the next year another 2, because then they have time to embed these items inside your organization.
Right. And out of all of these, then what do you find are the most? Maybe we can stop the share now. What do you find of companies have the biggest challenge with?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would say autonomy. So because self-organized teams, it's possible when you are innovating on the edge of your organization. Disruptive innovation, you can create a new kind of team with more autonomy and then scale it up in that fashion when it grows up. But to infuse self-organized teams inside the current large hierarchy, especially in Germany and Switzerland, by the way, it's almost impossible. That they were laughing at me, and I understand because of the culture, right? It's a totally around 8 degrees difference. But I would say in most cultures globally, it's a big challenge to make it work. In some cases, it's possible when you have a young team, young employees, already more aligned with the gaming culture, right? Because gaming culture is like organizational culture, right? And increasingly in the future, and they are used to have bottom-up emergence, self-organization within the gaming conditioning when they are young, and then they move to a company. So it's an easy way to migrate or to embed it in their thinking and behavior. While older people, they have a hard time making the shift because the leaders and the managers, they become from active to passive advisors in most cases. And while the employees become from passive, more active. They have to make their own decisions. So not everybody is able to do that or wanting to do that. To make their own decisions, right? And it's quite a different. It's a big change, and the rest is quite easy. AI can also be an issue, obviously, right? Now it's easier because there's more awareness. But 10 years ago, when you talk about AI, deep learning, for example, they were like, "What are you talking about? We don't have the data in order. The data is not aggregated in one central database. So what about privacy, security, metadata alignment, synchronization, standardization, normalization?" And so the core of AI, the data itself, was already a huge problem, right? In large organizations as corporates and governments globally, by the way, not just here in Holland. So I think now we are in a better phase of making bigger moves with AI within larger organizations because there's more, the backend is now more in a proper condition to make it work and to be effective. So that's the AI part. And AI in itself has advanced quite a lot in terms of capabilities, OpenAI, for example, but across the board also commercial proprietary AI solutions, besides the open source ones. And if you look at, let's say, what else is difficult to implement? I would say community management, because most companies think or leaders think it's easy to create community, right? But it's not easy. I've done it myself since 2007. I think 5 or 6 different communities, online, offline combined, mostly offline starting, then online. So events, conferences, now meetups, all these things. That there's a tension between the community being authentic over time, and also being a company, corporate, profit, right? So purpose versus profit. How do you integrate that? And that's not easy. And if you are a large organization, or even worse, let's say a governmental institute, they have a hard time to really get the heart of the community, right? To openness, transparency, authenticity, win-win relationships, right? To co-create, let go of control, open up, let go. Self-organization, emergence, all that stuff. They because they have a control mindset and a money mindset, an exploitation mindset, resources mindset. But it's the opposite of resources, right? Because it's about living beings, human beings. So, and it's about co-creation, and it's about we instead of me. So there's this tension, and at first they get it, or they seem to get it. some of these clients, but then over time they want to exploit it, and it becomes win-lose again, zero sum. Yeah, and then you implode the whole community, right? So I think large organizations, not all of them, have a really hard time to really understand communities because they have not grown up in these meetups, events like me, and I've done like 60 of these events in my life.
Right.
The TEDx, Mobile Monday, Quantified Self, Lean Startup, Singularity, University, all these things. And it's a different value system. It's very different from, let's say, corporate or governmental.
Yeah.
But it's the emergence. It's the new mainstream, right? So if you don't know about communities yourself, you're going to be in trouble, I would say, in the next 10 years, because these values become dominant, in my view, over time.
And that's interesting. So you think that not only is this something that companies who want to grow fast need to consider, it's going to become dominant in general.
You look at, for example, we are now a bit in a different space, but digital platforms have moved on to digital ecosystems, right? So basically, even more women relationships, broader, deeper, more varied alliances and networking, right? In an ecosystem, even with your competitors, right? And then the next step now is you move from ecosystem to ecosystems and distributed autonomous organizations, right? The blockchain-based organizations, fully automated. Yeah, these organizations are also in line with building communities, maybe even more, right? If you look at Web3, it's all community-based, right? Even more than 10 years ago with the Exponential Organizations. So it's an extrapolation of that. And they're probably also more purpose-driven than, let's say, 10 years ago, from the get-go. Not everyone, but there's a tendency to become more purpose-driven, right? From the heart, not from the mind, because then it's still ephemeral. And so, I think communities are here to stay because of the gaming culture. It's the same thing, right? If you look at all these amazing popular games, they are communities, right? Not just World of Warcraft back then, Fortnite, and now all these newer versions of gaming. These are communities.
Right. You use the term there, Web3. Just define that for people who are not familiar with what that means.
There are many different definitions. It's still emerging, but let's say it's the core of it is the blockchain-based economy. You might add in NFTs or other components or technologies or solutions, but the core is blockchain-based with crypto, so with tokens. And I think that might be we might enter the second phase next year. There's a lot of innovation coming up in 2023 in all these different domains and sectors. And so it might be a more healthy, let's say, innovation cycle for blockchain compared to the last 10 years, because it was too early back then, also with DAOs and distributed autonomous organizations and the ICOs. It was too early. It's similar to the end of the 90s, which I followed intensely myself. You have the dot-com bubble, right? So the first phase of dot-com was crazy, right? 1994 until 2000. Then it imploded, a reset, and then you get the second wave. And then the most important companies, came to power. And I think the same will happen with blockchain to a certain degree, because blockchain is not a solution to everything. But what I think is important is the values below the blockchain. These will stay, right? So community, win-win, more equal, more social cohesion, more decentralization, and more security, more purpose-driven. So I think that's more important for me than Web3 or blockchain. It's the underlying value shift that's very hopeful and needed.
Yeah, because that was something that I guess I had moments reading Exponential Organizations thinking, does this shift exacerbate some of the problems we've got in society, right?
Yes.
With sort of autonomized organizations. And we talk about staffing on demand, right? So you've got this autonomization of individuals, right? And I've just got my, I'm an Uber driver and I'm allowed to work as long as I can log in this morning. But at the moment the Uber doesn't want me driving anymore, I can't act, security has gone, levels of anxiety going up, a sense of security and belonging actually decreases. You could argue through some of these trends. And do we exacerbate, for example, just want to take one example, the mental health issues that people seem to be increasingly experiencing in our societies? Is all this making it worse? But it sounds like you've got vision that's suggesting it might make it better.
I agree with you. That's why I felt uncomfortable over the years. You talk about the gig economy now, and you can talk about modern slavery or whatever, but it didn't feel right to me. So I wrote a piece in the Dutch Financial Times, I think 5 years ago already, a long read about what comes after exponential organizations in terms of more egalitarian, more I would say justified, equal, fair organizations. So that, let's say you have Uber riders or with more voting rights, or maybe stock ownership, a small piece, or maybe insurance, or a combination of all, right? And that's infused with the DAOs, distributed autonomous organizations, the Web3 blockchain-based organizations, startups. They have this equality more embedded from the get-go. So I expected already back then the shift away from, let's say, classic exploitative exponential organizations to more egalitarian ones. So I do agree with your concern, right? So that's one of the changes I've made also myself in my own journey in the last 10 years. But because the 1% got richer, right? While the rest was staying at the same level.
It seems like all of the gains of this productivity and scaling it seems to be captured by the top.
I don't believe in the 1%, right? Even some people think, you are the 1%, but I don't want to be the 1%, and the rest is lagging. I think that's not my whole self view, other view, nature view, world view. That's not the world I want to create, right? What I want to create is a more ecological, spiritual, socially advanced civilization, right? I see myself as a serial living being. I'm not a label or author or, let's say, job title. I'm a living being like you, right? And we are all in the same boat, right? And increasingly that becomes important. So we have to make a value shift, a mindset, a perspective shift. I call it the consciousness shift, right? I call it indigenous wisdom or ancient wisdom. That's the core. And if we don't develop that as an individual and as a collective, then we won't make it, in my view, right? Then we get increasingly more trouble. So exponential is great, right? You can use the exponential organization attributes, some of them, exponential technologies, right? I've been following this now for 10, 20 years now, probably more 20. It's all great. These are tools, but it's not the real solution. The solution is a shift in mindset, in heart set, and value set. And we need to combine both. And that's the shift that you are referring to. And that's already happening as well, right? So I'm excited about it. It's small scale, but it's this is my job, my life, my job, my whole life basically already today.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's talk through that then. So first of all, what do you see this shift as being? Like, what are the characteristics of this shift in, let's say, consciousness or value set? What are the main components of that? And then how do you see it changing? What are your sources for hope here? What are the signals?
Yeah. So now, for example, now let's start with the easy topics first, right? So I did these digital transformation programs the last 10 years across the world. And then I noticed it's not about digital transformation, right? It's about corporate transformation. And as you said, it's about leadership transformation. Why? Yeah, you have a CDO, right? For example, we work with the CDO globally with Volkswagen for a long time. He got it, right? He's already in the future, like me, he's a futurist, a visionary, whatever, right? And he talks to a CEO, a global CEO, who has a lack of understanding of what technology is all about, right?
Yeah.
So there is this, you need to have a cohesive team, right? A board, C-suite board, all aligned horizontally, vertically, all the same vision, purpose, mindset, value system. Now, that's already issue number one, right? But this applies to most organizations, by the way, this misalignment. That's on the easy part. But at the deeper level, let's say we have the Volkswagen example. It was already 5 years ago, so I can talk about it. But fundamentally, it's all about, you live as a large organization, 650,000 employees. You live in this capital market system, shareholder value. So you basically are restricted in your possibilities. But on the other hand, in some cases, some of these people who are awakened, they know we need to change the whole model. right? To become more socially cohesive, ecologically sensitive, let's say regenerative into today's terms. And yeah, they get stuck because it's not a rational conclusion to become more regenerative. It's not like, okay, I don't believe in shareholder value, and now I'm going to do stakeholder management and shared system value, and I will really appreciate nature. Because I learned the hard way, the only way you can transform yourself as a leader, wherever you are, is by doing the inner journey yourself first. And it's not easy, right? To encounter your shadow sides and to be in nature, walk in nature for 8 days without not eating for 4 days, just meditating, no shower, no food, right? You walk on spikes, then you can relate to nature in a different way, right? And I think that's fundamental. So a change is not a rational conclusion, a change is an emotion, and that's driven by personal experiences that need to be very disruptive, that need to be very confrontational. And that's from a psychological, spiritual point of view, the introspection part, the meditative part, that's step one. But also the nature, you will develop a new relationship with nature, with animals, with trees, with the ground, with plants, with the stars even, right? So with water and water ceremonies, all these things are important. So you have a deeper connection to nature. And when you have a deeper connection to nature, then your whole policy will shift.
Right.
You become courageous in terms of leadership, like Paul Polman and Feike Sijbesma in Holland, one of the key global leaders in sustainability and regeneration, the ex-CEO of DSM. Now, of course, we have a good alignment. We talk about this stuff, and they totally agree. For them, it's also a personal journey first, and then you move it outside to Unilever and other organizations to help transform the world. So that's the learning also of the book. Exponential technology organization is great, but you need exponential leadership, and that's consciousness leadership first. Otherwise, you amplify, with good intentions, you amplify the worst over time. You destroy nature and you destroy social cohesion. While if you do these journeys, let's say immanence journeys, I call it, to increase your consciousness, then you have a different value system, and then you are able to create a long-term, regenerative future for all of us.
Right.
But that's the shift, in my view.
Yeah. And it sounds to me like, from your perspective, it centers on connection to nature. Is that the sort of principal characteristic?
Connect to yourself first. You can do many things in that space. The safe ones, the non-controversial ones, are meditation, fasting, Kundalini activation process, breath work, obviously. Now, I've done all these things. These are very important. I'm still doing them. But you can also do, let's say more controversial things like that nature walk or 8 days, or in India, and that's hardcore. You walk into the poorest parts of India, but you walk 300 kilometers and you meditate 5 times a day. Or you can do Vision Quest, which is even bolder, right? So you spend 1 square meter for 4 days without food, without water, and alone in the jungle, right? So you learn to depend upon yourself, right? So it's great for your self-confidence. And you know that everything is internal, right? So consciousness creates matter instead of the other way around, right? Because then you experience that. But as a result of that, this shift in perception and awareness, it's called immanence, spaciousness, I call it, you are able to relate to nature at a deeper level while standing in this 1 square meter for 4 days alone, right? Without any food or water.
And that's what you did.
No, of course, this is the future, right? I believe this is important to do, or maybe also yourself. And this is also scaling up, right? It's still small scale today, but this is becoming more important over time. But for example, if you do Compostela, this walk from France to Spain every year in June, I think.
Oh, yeah.
That they had 3,000 people, I think, 30 years ago. Now they have 330,000 people doing this walk for 4 weeks, I think, 4 or 5 weeks. So these nature journeys, walks, you might call it religious or spiritual. I call it conscious or introspection. Connect to nature also, and these are growing exponentially, right? That's very hopeful.
Yeah, one of my last guests on the podcast was a forest bathing guide.
Yeah,
Which is
exactly.
a big,
Exactly.
a
So
big
also
growth in her
sound.
business.
I'm a DJ. I make music because there's one of my inner child gaps from 30 years ago or 35 years ago. So I'm DJing now once a month now for 12 hours. I do 12-hour DJ sets. So it's also about this journey, right? It's about indigenous wisdom, and it's also about the sound healing, sound bathing, and the mysticism of sound and music. If you look into the Sufis, it's an amazing book, the mysticism of sound and music. It's very old wisdom, the Sufis, which I'm super fan about raving about, because it's about mysticism, not about religion. That's more closer to me, and it shows you the value of sound healing, right? Already thousands of years ago, right? It's mind-boggling.
Well, I've been using a tuning fork actually. I've been getting it and putting it all around my body, and I've had big impact from that.
Yeah, you have all these trends now, also on Instagram, or TikTok, all these channels. But there's a lot of bullshit there, but also a lot of truth, right, in terms of frequencies and. But I highly recommend everybody to explore it for themselves, right? Do forest bathing or sound healing, sound bathing, and if the quality, if the context is great, the setting and intention, and the artist who is experienced with a good heartfelt intention and purity and awareness, then it comes through, right? You feel it in all your cells, and you are healing. So you become more conscious as a leader, right? So I think I'm an advisory board member for a few festivals globally. One of them is Wonderfruit. I think one of the best festivals in the world in Asia, like Burning Man, but smaller in Asia.
Right. Sorry, say that again. Wonder Foods.
Wonderfruit. Yeah, Wonderfruit.
Wonderfruit. Oh, Wonderfruit. Yeah.
Wonderfruits. And so today you can explore all these new experiences yourself or with somebody else, and that's a transformative experience, right? It's growing also rapidly now, and so I try to learn from festivals and art, right, and infuse it to become more conscious. For example, I visit museums quite often because my parents are artists, right? So I'm brought up with that, and I think art is important, increasingly important for a leader, because it allows for not just relaxation, internal cohesion, alignment, and introspection. It's also great for imagination, creativity, and basically all great art is a light that brings you closer to the truth, right? As Picasso said. So it's a way to recalibrate in a world of craziness, right, and turbulence, and the VUCA world. So art is in many ways fundamental for leadership, and it can be art in any form, if it's music or movies or books or whatever, opera, dance. It's all the same.
Right.
Because it's a way to heal, right? To feel, to reconnect to your inner soul again. Because outer beauty is a catalyst for inner beauty.
Yeah.
It shows you who you are as a human being, living being at a deeper level, right? It's healing, it's spiritual. It's also about social cohesion, because if you are aligned inside yourself, you're more productive, as science shows, more social, more happy, right? And more ecological aware. So you address all the concerns we have today, climate change, biodiversity, now all these scarcities now, mental health diseases, whatever. It's all about the inner connection, right? So, and art is a way to recalibrate this inner connection. But also nature is a way to recalibrate, or meditation, right? There are many ways to do, also even sports, right? I work out 10 hours a week because, my profile type in terms of gene keys, right? I'm a generating manifester or manifesting generator, whatever you want to call it. But I'm prototyped as 21 in gene keys 3 times. So my driving force is valor, right? It's like a knight, a warrior, whatever.
Mm.
And a warrior needs physical exercise to recalibrate. So I didn't do it because of COVID, right? So I got cranky, like me, more negative, cranky, because I need this physical alignment to recalibrate also my soul.
Right.
So for me, sauna is important, working out, being in nature, meditation, connect to water, because I'm a water science, and I love scuba diving, right? Water ceremonies, being at the sea, swimming.
Are you aware of the work of Veda Austin?
Sorry?
Veda Austin, are you aware the water artist I think she's out of New Zealand?
I don't think so yet.
She puts intention, she meditates on water.
Oh,
and then fast freezes it, and then you see the patterns in the water.
That's beautiful, yeah.
It's beautiful work.
But when you think about it, It was an insight for me, I think 2 years ago. Yeah. If you look at sound and light, water and fire, right? It's all about vibration, right? Now, and of course, the universe is about vibration, right? Energy. We know that from physics and science. So, but if you go a bit deeper, I realized, whoa, it's light therapy, sound therapy. It's about healing. It's about recreation and regeneration. So all these modalities, light, sound, water, when you really open up to it, it's healing, it's creation, creativity, imagination, and it's regeneration. Whoa. And then it hit me like, okay, whoa, I have totally underappreciated the basics of life, right? And this is funny because if you look at it from a scientific point of view, let's say Singularity University point of view, there's so much innovation going on in terms of sound, right? It's crazy. Because I live in that world partially because of my DJ existence now. But also in terms of light, right? There's a lot of photonics. It's a huge space evolving. And we discover new things about water, about light, about sound, scientifically, right? That's I would say, very optimistic about how we are able to heal the world and ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And I'm super excited about it. I can talk about it for hours, but it's still a mystery to a certain degree. But we are discovering new things almost on a daily basis. For example, water, it functions like a battery. It has a memory, right? So how can you use light to influence that also inside your body? Now, I've been doing this now for 6 years, I think. Yeah, it makes a difference, and the science behind it is also mind blowing. Anyway, we go too much detail, maybe.
Yeah,
but...
no, but that's interesting. So when you say you're using light to affect the water in your body, what do you mean by that?
If you are, let's say, we call it sunbathing, right? But so, and not just to get vitamin D and to become have a tan, whatever, but it's also relaxing. But it's also a way to restore the balance of water inside your body, right? And to become more healthy, more create a better immune system. These are newer insights, right? So and you have, of course, different light, electromagnetic spectrum, but different light has different impact on the water inside your body, right? So the memory, the battery function of water inside your body, and how it relates to your immune system. This is all quite new stuff, right? But I think there's something there because we know there's a fourth phase of water. You have ice, water, steam. The fourth phase is easy water, EZ water. You can check it out, and that's the new functionality that we have discovered, right, in water. So how can we leverage that as human beings also outside water, right? Let's say, in the rivers or maybe somewhere else. That's interesting to explore, I would say.
Right. I mean, this is fascinating. I'm kind of blown away in terms of
I would talk about leadership.
Where you're at. Yeah, no, but versus the book. So I'm interested to you. Was there a sort of pivot moment, right? For you in terms because the Exponential Organizations, is brilliant in many ways, but it's you could maybe say somewhat technocratic, and it certainly doesn't cover a lot of the elements that you've just spoken about. Was there a moment for you where you started to see things differently?
Well, yeah, I was working too hard, right? Because I did like 300 keynotes a year, 50 countries, whatever. So it was too crazy, right? Not good for the environment, most importantly. Also not good for my social network, my family, and myself, my health, right?
Right.
So, and then you start to recalibrate your whole life, right? What are you doing? Because you can basically never get enough of what you don't really need. The quote by U2. So you can do more keynotes, become more successful, more status, more money, but in the end, it's all ephemeral. It's not the core of existence. The core of existence is consciousness, feelings, family, kids, and your good friends, and live a purposeful life, and try to pass it on, right? Because we are all intermediary. So, and that means less flying, right, or no flying, preferably. But some people they want me to be there in person. Unfortunately, hope this will change. And make different decisions and focus on your inner journey besides your outer journey, and then you become more stable and more happy and a more pleasant person, more coherent as well. And to be, I think there's a understanding about success, right? Everybody wants to be famous and successful. Look at Instagram and all the stuff now. Well, if it happens, there's a lot of stuff that's not really funny or pleasant. But nobody talks about it. But I think we should be more honest about that as well, right? And recalibrate our own KPI and OKR system, right? What does success mean for you, right? It can be very different than for me. For me now, success is to feel, to have a room to stay conscious and to explore myself. I used to be more about changing the world, right? Now I'm changing about myself, and then hopefully change the world. So it's a different sequence. So I changed a lot. I'm happy with success, of course, because you have to do it once in your life. It's all journey, it's crazy, it's funny, right? But you get used to it after a few months, and then what? Continue on that path? No, because it's superficial in my view.
Right.
It's better. It's okay, because if you transform yourself, you transform also your whole lineage, right? You think we are separate human beings. I think that's not true. I think we are all entangled at the deepest level, also with my ancestors and my kids and their kids, blah, blah. So if I change myself fundamentally, then the energy shifts in that whole lineage. I believe that.
Yeah, I believe that too.
It's hard to prove, but this is my experience.
Yeah. But I'm sort of fascinated. So you're flying around, you're doing these 300 keynotes a year, and like, what's the first step you make when you have this real moment of realization, and then what's the first move you make?
It's very, very. That's very easy to answer, because you can never get enough of what you don't really need. So what you do, you amplify your ego by saying yes to everything, right? And then you almost burn out after a few years. I've done it, let's say 3-4 years, and then it's not, you hit a wall basically, right? So, and then you change. I skipped like 75%, and started my inner journey, and I think that helped me, right, to stay sane or become more sane.
But cool.
But I think in general, there's no growth without pain, right? So you got to feel pain, right? To a certain degree. So a setback is good, right? These are gifts if you allow them in, even though it's hard, right? At the moment, it's always hard, right? I don't dismiss this. But we need stressors to grow, right? To become anti-fragile. And I think life is more increasingly for me about how to proactively look for new stressors or out of comfort zone experiences to transform myself, my life, and to become more whole and hopefully a better serial living being.
Yeah. Yeah, and I suppose the reason I'm asking the question, because there may be people out there resonate with you with being in that position, right? Maybe they're on the verge of burnout. Maybe they're doing the equivalent of 300 keynotes a year. And so what were the first few steps that helped to get you sort of back into yourself? Like, what worked for you, I suppose, in starting to make that shift towards where you're at now?
What worked for me? Soul searching, right? So take time off, walk in nature. That helped a lot. And I did a journey in India a few years after that, but that was the most transformative moment, because if you walk in nature for 8 days, 300 kilometers, and there's no shower, no bed, there's nothing, and you don't eat for 4 days, and you just meditate, then it's very confrontational. That the first 3 days are horrific, sort of, in a way. And then, you get this immense, beautiful experience. You feel totally connected to everything in an organic way. So there's no plant medicine, no whatever, no psychedelics, just meditation. That's it. And I think that's this is inside all of us, right? This is the core of humanity. This sense of being connected, integrated, entangled with everything. And it's a beautiful experience. It's sacred. It's a sacred experience, a mystical, sacred experience. I didn't know about this, right? I'm almost 50 years old. Why don't I know about this, right? I'm almost I'm quite old already, a bit old now. Let's say on half, and I've never learned about this stuff in the Western world. Wow, this is interesting. Why is that?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? I mean,
Well, in my view, it's quite fundamental, right? And especially the next period of human civilization to heal the planet.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point, and I'm the same. I mean, I found, I think I found my way back to myself, a lot through therapy, and then more latterly through sort of spiritual experience and spiritual practice. But yeah, none of it's like mainstream in the culture. You got to go outside, pretty much outside of Western culture, certainly mainstream Western culture, to find this, these experiences, these guides, these methods, to reconnect.
And
Yeah.
also it also helped. I visited these some of these indigenous cultures, right? The Mayas, the Incas, now the mystics in places across the world, also in India. Yeah, and then you learn about this in practice. You see it in the daily behavior, and that's very illuminating and inspiring. It's not like, okay, what they do is all perfect and we are stupid, they are amazing, but it's more about the best of all worlds, right? So I like the Western, let's say, external world of technology, blah, blah, now the externalized world.
Yeah.
That's one piece of the solution. And then combine it with the inner journey, the inner technology, I call it, with the mystics and to come from a sacred place, not full time, but more of the time you have. And then the combination is powerful and very healing in my view.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, how do you see this synthesis playing out then? I know to some extent you've already answered this question, but like, how do you see those two merging together? Like the externalized world shifting in line with an internal, or people creating new internal worlds for themselves?
Yeah, it's I'm doing this now for a few years. As I said, city development in Rotterdam, created a vision for the next 30 years. Also infusing based on indigenous wisdom, and then do pilots. That is now about to start, so it seems to be adopted. People are pretty excited about it. And I did the same with leadership journeys, and there was a profound impact. I've been doing leadership journeys in now the last 10 years. First with Lean Startup and Singularity technology, Exponential Technologies, and my book Exponential Organizations, and then I started doing this with indigenous wisdom, nature, all that stuff, generation. And that has a profound impact on the participants. And I'm super excited about it myself. So we do include breath work and meditation and nature walks, right? And all the classic topics like new technology, organizations, leadership now, all these things combined in a cohesive way.
Oh,
that
wow.
has been quite, it's pretty. So I'm going to scale this up once a month, right? That's my goal because I like it so much. It's 4 to 5 days, and because then you get really impactful. Right? You see CEOs crying 80%. I've never seen this before in my whole life. And that's the level of impact I want to have. It's not like a large group, but let's say 15 people, 20 people. So my next journey is more about, less about scale, more about depth, right? To have a deeper impact. And then they are able to transform their organizations. So that's, maybe also relatable towards your work, right? I think that's necessary to scale that up somehow, right? That we need to, in my view, infuse more leaders more quickly with this new value system inside, based on these journeys and experiences, right?
Right.
And also in Holland, I'm setting up this new initiative for the next 10 years. I want to get all the young kids between 10 and 18 to do a 1 week nature walk in Holland once a year across all the schools. So I've created a whole ecosystem, like I've done for my hometown Rotterdam. I talked about that earlier, and also the buitenboord motor is an ecosystem to reskill 1 million people in Holland. It's also super successful. I set it up 6 years ago with Simone Heidema, among others. But anyway, so we built an ecosystem for nature walks. It's the same, all the different suppliers, and then we will infuse it inside the Ministry of Education, and they will adopt it, and then it will be implemented. So because if you look at kids, They have more anxiety, more depression, more autoimmune disease, more loneliness. They're totally disconnected, more mental health issues. 10x more than 30 years ago. 10x, 5 to 10x, it's crazy.
Mm.
So the way to solve it is by doing a nature walk, right? Not like I've done because it's too extreme, walking on spikes for 4 hours without on bare feet, but that's insane. But it works for all the people, all the men. But when you are young, you just by being in nature, without a smartphone, without alcohol, without any distraction, because walking is going inside yourself. You walk in from your mind to your heart to your soul, right? And it's about letting go. It's about finding yourself. And these kids, they need to know that feeling, right? To feel this strong presence inside themselves. And then you can disrupt depression, anxiety, loneliness, because there is no loneliness when you are connected to yourself, right?
Yeah.
Young kids, gaming, social media, of course they get lost, right? If you move to the metaverse, even worse, right? Soon. I don't hope so, but let's assume they live in the metaverse all the time. They've even less knowledge about nature, right? Well, I moved away from that, away from the metaverse, and more into nature. And because what you experience, you know about. What you know about, you're going to love. And what you love, you're going to protect and regenerate. So how can we regenerate nature while we spend more time in the metaverse soon with our kids?
Yeah.
It's totally insanity. Of course, then nature will implode and give us a knockout back, right? A boomerang. So we have to shift our attention and time spent, also as parents, me included, to become more present in nature, be the example, right? Doing it ourselves in botanical gardens, your own garden, in parks, whatever, or living in nature. And then infuse our kids with the love that we feel, and hopefully they will also feel the same for nature, and then start to regenerate as a leader, right? Long term. So that's the scalable solution. So I think it will play out. We're going to do 1 million kids every year, 1 week walking within all educational institutes. That's the goal.
Wow. That's a great answer to the question, right? So how do we take this shift in this?
No, it's very easy. I can give you the template, right? I have the template is open source. You can get it from me. I know what needs to be done. You basically need to identify the key nature walk providers in your country, and there are many, but they are lesser known. You have to identify them, create a meeting. This is your purpose. This is the vision. You're going to collaborate. What's the business model, the organizational model? What is reasonable? Well, how can we segment this? Now we go to the ministry, because the ministry, it costs 1 billion, right, a year. I did some easy calculation. Well, 1 billion. 1 billion is nothing, because the impact of this over time in terms of you have less costs, right? Mental health, criminality, disconnects, psychological, career mistakes, whatever. There's a huge package of costs that you are able to avoid to a certain degree, of course, not fully. Yeah. So the return on investment is obvious, right? It's all about being visionary and being bold and being courageous and doing it, because the solution is very easy. It's already here, right? We just need to scale and train the trainer, right?
Yeah. I tell you what it reminds me of. There's a guy in the States doing something. He's got a big project for similar in terms of its audacity to turn lawns into gardens for growing food.
Yeah.
But using that same exponential organizations mindset. But in this case, he wants to apply it to everybody in the States should turn their lawns to gardens and reconnect to their food sources in that way.
Yeah, and of course it's about kids, so you have to be super secure, safety, double check that people are involved now, and not just one person. Of course, a few people now to make it a safe space in all dimensions, of course, obviously. But these are, of course, prerequisites. But it's let's start, right? We can do it, right? It's important.
Yeah. I love that. I love that vision.
What's funny, because between 0 and 9 years old, and my son is 9 years old, kids are already entangled because they are connected from birth. Then they have the second me awareness, it's called, between 9 and 18. And then they become aware of the disconnect with sort of reality. Well, that's illusion. Because we also condition them in the school system that they are disconnected, right? And you might say, we used to think, that's the normal process to become an adult. well, I believe, we should stick to the connected part, right? The first 9 years, and then you stack some knowledge pieces on top of it. Not disrupt the sacred, the connected space, right? The inner connection.
Yeah.
So we are, as a society and a culture and a media system, digital and offline, and also as parents, in most cases, we propagate the disconnect. It's total insanity.
Yeah.
But we should learn from the kids, right?
Yeah.
Stay young ourselves and entangled. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. No, that's a very inspiring vision, and you can absolutely see the enormous impact that would have.
Amazing. But if you close your eyes, let's say for 20 seconds, right? You imagine a world, let's say 100 years down the road, where all the kids have done this 1 week journey for, let's say, 7-8 years during school, the teen years, and then they become the leaders, and then mind blowing. Then everything will shift. Everything will shift. The media becomes more constructive, more positive, more healing, instead of destructive and exploitative and short term. The educational system will be transformed to a very large degree, way more mobile, nomadic in nature, more conscious, more healing, introspection in many ways now. More co-creative, more collective now. It's very different. It's more like an ecosystem, open and transparent. A healthcare system will be massively transformed. It becomes from corrective to preventative, right? Even beyond before preventative, right? Because it's positive psychology and a positive health, right? It's in a connection.
Yeah.
So you have way more self-healing, which is, by the way, also underrated, right? Self-healing is huge in terms of mind, on your immune system, hormonal system has all been scientifically proved for 7 years ago already in Science and Nature. So imagine a world where you basically lower the burden on healthcare, which is basically sick care. I think you can lower the budget by half if you apply these techniques. I talk about nature walks, self-healing, consciousness, right? And more preventative medicine. Yeah. Why aren't we what we are doing? This is the downside of doing this stuff. The reality is a permanent museum, right? This is my quote for 10 years. Now it's even worse. So everything I see in reality frustrates me because it's totally the opposite from what I have in my mind, right? In most cases. And the gap is increasing. So I need to be stabilize myself. Like, for me, it's almost like most is theater or amusement park. Because otherwise I go nuts myself, right? Because you go to, I don't have a car for 15 years, I'm proud of that. But if you drive, you go to a gas station, you look what they sell you. 90% is toxic. It's not healthy, right? 90%. Why is that, right? Why do we subsidize unhealthy food and the healthy food is more expensive? These things are crazy when you think about it. And why is plant-based not the normal in any sector, right? Not just in clothing or in medicine, but plant-based in all dimensions, right? Why not? Crazy.
Yeah. But then again, this is back to connection, right? Because if you can teach a kid the joy of growing a tomato, like I've got 5-year-old boys and they grew their own carrots this year, right? And they ate their own carrots, right? If you could teach, them early to appreciate nature and appreciate the abundance of nature, and I can grow a carrot and I can eat a carrot, right? Those simple acts that sets the mindset and the value system for life, right? It's like, I want more of that because it tastes better than what I can buy in the shop.
I hear you, but it goes even further in my view, because that's the first part, right? But then you have the principles of nature. Now, in the last 5 years, I've read quite a few books on, let's say, the underlying principles of nature, ecology, evolution, biology, life, right? From the last 150 years, basically, all the key experts. And that's a pattern, right? Now, I've identified 30 principles, and I'm applying these principles now in city development, leadership development, organizational development, and technological development as well. So, for example, one of the principles is self-organization and emergence. Now, you might say, well, what is the relationship with technology, right? Now, technology used to be very mechanistic, top-down control. Now, let's say, expert systems within artificial intelligence. Now you have bottom-up AI, deep learning, right? It's basically self-organized artificial intelligence emergence. This is now amplified by the transformer GPT, the GPT experience I talked about earlier. These are basically moving towards biological principles. So AI becomes more nature-based over time, which is mind-blowing, but because it used to be very different. So this is one example. Now, if you look at quantum technologies, I'm big into quantum now. I work for Davos at the Future Council for 4 years now on quantum technology, quantum computing, quantum simulation, quantum biology, and all that stuff, quantum sensors, quantum devices. Now, it's the whole spectrum. Quantum is you have digital, computational, zeros and ones. Then you have quantum, 0 and 1, and everything in between. And then you have nature and health. So quantum technology are closer to nature and to health, to how the universe works, than, let's say, digital or computational.
Yeah.
This is my shift, my thinking, also driven by George Dyson in his amazing book Analogia a few years ago. He confirmed he's the main historian in terms of computer science and the best in the world. He said, technology becomes more nature. And it's true, right? And so what if we apply the principles of nature to everything we see? This is my life, right? I'm doing this in practice. So self-organization, adaptiveness, immanence, resilience, ecosystems. Now, all these win-win relationships. Now, all symbiosis, mutualism. Now, look at the movie Avatar 1 and 2, right? We watched them with my kids. Beautiful. I like Avatar 1 more than 2, but there's so much indigenous wisdom there, so much about the principles of nature, right? That's the enchanting part of these movies. The importance, it's a spiritual movie, right? If you forget about all these action scenes, but I think that's BS. But okay, to sell the movie, I get it. But the spiritual part is core, right? It's all about the principles of nature, and it's a good lesson for a human civilization, right? I think we have to move to that space, the Navi space.
Right.
But there's so many gems inside these movies, but you have to look carefully, right? It's like these layered meanings and symbolism, and also indigenous wisdom, right? Many rituals there, ceremonies, profound and important. But you have to maybe watch some more review movies about these movies. Then you have a deeper sense of the importance of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I think coming back to the nature of the walk idea and this exposure and the experience of it, it's about giving
the
kids
growth processes. Let's say, if you look at nature, right, it's always like this Fibonacci and golden ratio, right?
Yeah.
Why is this not being applied to organizations, right? Now, from the Harvard Business Review, I've been reading it for 30 years, right? You're probably the same as me. There's the old world, right? The rational world. Fine, important, mind, control. But even in the Harvard Business Review, there was a classic on organizational growth, evolutionary development by Greiner. You probably have heard about it. So you have expansion, consolidation, expansion, consolidation.
Okay, yeah.
But if you think about it more deeply, it's basically a principle of nature. It's the way Fibonacci, right, and the golden ratio, the way nature organizes itself, right? It's expansion, consolidation, expansion, like a spiral, right?
Yeah.
And why don't we grow organizations like that? I'm doing it this way, right? Today, and everything I do. So I have a nature perspective on it, not a rational, mechanistic, machine-like perspective. Industrial, that's old.
Right.
And it doesn't work. Because if you grow too fast, you forget about consolidation, you get dilution or chaos.
Yeah, it reminds me of that.
Or misalignment.
Of the book, recently read The Man Who Destroyed Capitalism, Jack Welch, and how he was obsessed with having this constant story of growth to the markets and destroyed the company under the surface to do so.
I'm not saying that the thing is, human beings we are nature, we are part of nature, we are not disconnected or above nature. We are nature, but we also have some plus capabilities. That's the problem. So we need some top-down control to stabilize societies and organizations. I agree, but less than today. Now it's more like a police state, right? We're moving into the wrong direction, in my view.
Yeah.
So we need more self-organization and emergence in organizations and societies with some top-down control because of our unique human capabilities, our way to think in terms of scenarios, minds, the future, to avoid pain, to look for pleasure. Now, so we have additional capabilities compared to animals, or let's say life in general, and we need to be mindful how to calibrate that, right? So you need some top-down control, unlike nature, to stabilize that. But different from, let's say, what we're doing today, in my view, is too much top-down control.
Yeah.
So in that sense, we need a little bit more nature inside organizations and in societies than we have today, in terms of organizational principles and value shifts.
Yeah, that makes total sense, and it makes sense at every level. And it's starting with the individual, right? I mean, you to go and walk and do that walk and allow yourself to feel the pain and allow yourself the chaos to reign whilst you're there without food and so on. That took a level of letting go of the top-down control and just being in that moment and allowing whatever experience is going to happen. And
the same applies to cities. Now, I apply this to the city here. The city, a small city like 700,000 people, Rotterdam, my hometown, giving back indigenous wisdom. So give back to your own roots. And then we said, okay, what is it? So I dove into urban development, right? Urban design. In the last 60 years now, you have Jane Jacobs, who is probably the most visionary one. 60 years ago, an amazing book. Because 60 years ago, she talked about this, a city is a combination of processes and relationships, bottom up. So self-organization and emergence. And then she said, you have to create adjacent capabilities in a city based on these streams, the bottom-up streams, the processes, relationships, the interfaces, interactions, right? So complexity theory now and all the stuff. You can also look at the philosophy behind that, but that's a different podcast, probably many podcasts. But let's say if you grow a city, as we are doing now, from a bottom-up process, in terms of what already is there, in terms of the shifts in mobility, energy, education, people, there's a collision, right? There's this emergence. If you leverage that, you build on that, it becomes more successful. And it's true, right? But we think totally the opposite in Holland. It's all top-down market, or let's say, the governmental policy is too much top-down. It doesn't. There's not a way to, or even at the municipality level, to investigate, identify what are the bottom-up processes, and then leverage the interaction points and innovate based on that. They create this top-down vision without data, right? And then we implement. Of course, it doesn't work. It gets rejected, right, by the people or whatever, by nature. So it's a different way to look at everything in life. And my thesis is, and I have a lot of discussion about this globally and also locally, like, okay, you talk about why not create a regenerative product, and we still have an unregenerative organizational model and mechanistic technologies and what have you. I said it doesn't work. It has to be internally consistent, like a configuration, a system thinking and doing and acting. So if you have a regenerative, nature-based product, but your processes, production processes, and let's say the inputs and the organizational model and technologies to make that work are not regenerative, then what's the point? It will implode, it won't scale long term, and it won't help heal the planet. So we have to infuse immunity in all the things we do. Leadership, city development, organizational development, technological development. That's the big agenda, in my view. And it takes a lot of time because it's so different from the way we are programmed, right? But it's possible. In 5 years, you can make a big shift. I can assure you that. But not in 1 year. That's too quick. No.
Well, because this is a one by one transformation, you have to give people the space to make these journeys in and of themselves, right? I think that's part of the reason it takes time.
There's a lot of silo thinking still, right? So the vertical mindset in terms of, okay, we do generative products, like clothing or food, vertical farming, and I'm also into that. But that's a part of the solution. But if you don't address the consciousness issue, and because then you apply it everywhere, your organization also has to become more biological instead of machine. If you have a machine-like organization and create regenerative products, some say to me, that works. You can look at Patagonia. Yeah, Patagonia is the opposite example. They are a regenerative organization and have regenerative products to a certain degree, and they innovate on that, pioneering that. Deep respect for that. But they are the example of a company who really gets it, in my view. Most companies, they start creating sustainable regenerative products without solving the other issues: technology, organization, leadership, the whole thing, the city, the ecosystem. You need to address all of it, in my view, long term.
All of it, and the leadership being paramount, because Patagonia is a great example. That the founder himself was a surfer, and one of their policies is you can leave whenever you like Patagonia to go surfing. Right? It's like they embedded right at the core of the value set of the organization is it's imperative you connect with nature.
Yeah, that's the first step. So I give these lectures about this for now, let's say last year after COVID, and it's very interesting what's going on. I used to think, okay, younger people would get it instantly, but surprisingly, older people are more impacted by this talk than younger people, and I think the reason is the level of system thinking you need, holistic, integral thinking, to understand this based on your own experiences. So if you are young, you might be able to get Patagonia, and you are into vegan and sustainable festivals, whatever. That I get that, but let's say the macros, the big picture story is about, okay, we need to change all the systems to become more aligned with nature. And surprisingly, they don't get that. But maybe it's too ambitious for me to hope for them to understand it. But the older people get it, and they are crying. They're totally disrupted. They say, holy, what have I done? Like, I've been sleeping for 50 years, right? Or 60 years. So that's confrontational. But they feel that it's needed. So the impact is more there. Interesting.
Yeah. And back to that word confrontational, right? We talked
it's very
about that earlier. And it requires people to confront themselves. This shift requires pain. It requires allowing the pain in.
Basically, what happens if you tell the whole journey, this is just, of course, very piecemeal, but let's say after a week or a few weeks, you basically say, you've done this in your life, but life is this. So you ignored all this, and this is how you raised your own kids. And this is how you lived your own life, right? Just by doing this. So it's left brain in some. Our right brain, there's a great book about this, The Matter with Things by Ian McGilchrist. One of the best books. The Matter with Things. With things, great book. Now, that's a piece of the problem and the solution, right? And you basically say to people, you've been living this like this one-dimensional world, life. Now here comes somebody who is opening it up, right? And this guy is saying you have 1 year to incorporate the new thinking, right? Or 2 years, but it's not really a pleasant message. But it needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, not a pleasant message. It needs to be done. I mean, that sums it up, right? This is totally this. I don't think there's anybody who's been through this journey who hasn't, as you said, experiencing some level of discomfort and pain to get to the other side.
A lot.
You got, that's there's a brilliant book that I'm reading right now called The Palliative Society, written by an Asian philosopher, and it talks about this problem in modern society as we use our mind, we use this strong mind that we've got to build systems around us that allow us to avoid all pain to our detriment ultimately.
Yeah, it's interesting. You can look at history in many ways, but from an economic point of view, some theorists, they talk about it's about to lower the level of insecurity in economic systems over time, using technology, for example. That's one frame of it. And on the other hand, you have people like Nassim Taleb, who I really admire as in terms of life and visionary. who says, yeah, you need some level of uncertainty and uncomfortable stressors, being uncomfortable to grow and to become resilient and to benefit from chaos and to have an inner sense of security. So, and I think it's both true, right? We need to balance the two. But now we live in a system or in a society increasingly where risk is being eliminated and as much as possible. Well, that makes you fragile. I'm convinced. If you have a very clean house, there's no bacteria. Yeah, you get a less advanced immune system, right? So you need some bugs and viruses and bacteria. And now we have the pandemic and it becomes maybe even worse. But yeah, we got to play with nature, embrace nature to a certain degree, while lower the biggest uncertainties, risks. But we need some risk, right? And some pain and stressors to stay sane and to become more resilient as well. And I think also, it's also about building character, right? You talk about leadership. How do you build character? Not by, now, Google data shows by HR in the last 15 years, the best employees had a huge setback in their teens or early in life, death, disease, whatever. They had to transform themselves early on. Huge pain, huge setback, stressor. While if you have a very comfortable life, right, let's say, you go to the Ivy League, blah, 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 check the boxes, no death, parents still alive, together, smooth, wealthy family background, no stressors. Now they're 40, they get a setback, they're whining, right? They become not the greatest employees according to Google, right?
Yeah.
So, and we live in a society where we want to sort of pamper our kids, right? There's a lot of books about this in the last 10 years. So we have created a very fragile generation, not just millennial, but I think even more Gen Z. They're overly sensitive now, overly. Which in a way is great, right? Don't get me wrong, in terms of alignment and entanglement, and let's say being aware, let's say woke, that's great to a certain degree. But if you are too sensitive, right, then you get this. This is detrimental to innovation and to have a cohesion in society. You need to have a sort of inner strength and resilience, and that's basically character being built by stressors, by pain early in life, and how you dealt with that, integrated. And if you avoid pain, they have lack entrepreneurship, right? I was playing outside, right? I took a lot of risk when I was young. It's a wonder I'm still alive, by the way. But these days, parents, it's more secure, safety.
Yeah.
With a lot of downsides over time.
Yeah, because you end up with these chronic conditions.
If you like Jonathan Haidt, Haidt, he's a very famous psychologist in the US, author, thinker, polymath, whatever. Great guy. He talks about this for the last 5 years. I think he's totally right? We have become overly protective now. And you cannot eliminate risk totally. That's first of all, it's bullshit. Life doesn't work like that, but there's a lot of downsides to it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think I just from my own, all of my most transformative experiences have resulted from me allowing myself to feel pain. It's just
it's the same with Burning Man, right? At first you freak out, but there's a lot of value you get when you are there, right? I was there 11 years ago, but it's an uncomfortable experience in some ways. But the nature walk in India as well, I do it now every year. It's uncomfortable at first, but then it's like a muscle, right? It's you train.
And then you want more of it, because then once you've experienced it, I feel much better, more grounded, more connected, more loving. More, I feel more creative. Whatever those outcomes are, you're like, okay, I get it, right? So next time I get this opportunity, do I go towards my pain, towards my fear? Do I expose myself to that? I know subconsciously that yes, the answer should be yes, because I know the benefits on the other side. Whereas if I'm not given that, if I hadn't had those experiences, I wouldn't be wired in this way. So I think it's so important in society that we give people those experiences early and get them to learn that exposure to stressors is a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. So and that's a shift in basically in leadership, right? I think we need an Apollo program to address this. You cannot just say, yeah, it's responsibility of the ministers and the prime minister, and let's say, or it's the CEOs of corporates, or maybe it's the leaders of the schools. No, it's everybody, right? We need alignment between all the key media outlets to promote this consistently in a normal, addressable language, normal language. It's about leadership. It's about political leadership, business leadership. It's about it's about parents. It's about everybody, right? So why not create an Apollo program like in the '60s, not to get to the moon, but to get inside, right? And to be more in nature, to be more appreciative, and maybe do, let's say, the week of nature or the week of introspection, right? Why not? Where everybody helps together to address the theme in that one particular week full time, right? Gives a lot of energy and cohesion as well, right? You have so many benefits. Why don't we do it? I don't get it. It's so obvious. It works, right?
Yeah,
We've done it
yeah.
before. The Apollo project worked, right? Went from nothing to the moon in 8 days, or 8 years. That's insane when you think about it. That's a massive achievement, an unbelievable achievement. And this is easier. So why not do it, right? With bigger impact, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with that. It's, yeah. And I think maybe that in some ways that is the way to is to appeal to some extent to people's right brains, right? As like a big material thing that can be achieved for all of those who are turned on in that way.
About
but then have them experience the impacts of it on a deeper level.
Yeah, but it's also funny if you think about it's maybe a bit off topic, but I think most people in their lives they have unusual experiences, maybe one, maybe 10, whatever. And they never talk about it. So I talk about this stuff for the last 6 years, right? Let's say telepathy and all these now near-death experiences, all these amazing experiences I've had in an authentic way, by the way I memorize it, to say the least. Now, so I share that in a 1-hour talk, and it made me realize the feedback was enormous. And these are people like me, visionaries in Europe now, and they said, "Wow, for the first time I'm able to share this." Okay, wow, and okay, a lot of tears and great conversations, debates, whatever, dialogues. And then I realized, okay, this is unusual because everybody has these experiences, but we are not allowed to talk about this stuff. But it might be interesting because if you look at science, the evolution of science, you have Newton, classical mechanics, now classical universe, and then you have Einstein, right? But Einstein, basically what he did, he leveraged the anomalies, so the exceptional cases, to create a bigger theory of life, of the universe. So embedding Newton, right, as a subset. Now, my hunch is we are about to see a revolution probably in the next 10 years because of what I see also in science and philosophy, that we are moving into a broader, let's say, life view, where we are able to integrate the crazy stories about telepathy, premonitions, and all this stuff, right? Near-death experiences, into a new way to integrate consciousness into science. I think that's the shift we are about to see. And that's very hopeful and also important too.
That is extremely hopeful, yeah.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. I cannot talk about it, but because it's complicated material, it needs a lot of time, and people will probably drop off in some way. But I do believe that because I see so much going on in all these disciplines, right? Basically, philosophy, physics, metaphysics, right? There's interesting what's going on. If you look at Lex Fridman, right? He's the my number one podcast for the last 2 years when he started. I'm a big fan of his work. When you watch him his interviews closely, that's the pattern, right? That's the pattern we see. But you only see when you watch like weeks of content by him in a row, then you see it, right?
Yeah, and it's growing, isn't it? It's growing. Growing this. Yeah, and there's this imaginal cell metaphor which I love from Paul Pullman's wife, Kill Pullman, Kimpelman in her book, Rebuild the Future, she introduced me to the term, this idea of imaginal cells. So they exist as the chrysalis grub turns into a butterfly. There are these imaginal cells, right? That kind of connect with each other, and they start to cluster and ultimately form the butterfly, of course. But it feels like there is this activation of imaginal cells, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Across the world right now. And yeah, as you say, we're seeing it in all domains in different forms. And it's a question of when's that going to? Well, maybe it is 10 years. When does that reach critical mass, and when does the butterfly start to form from the?
I don't know, but if I look at my counter futurists, I think 2025 will be an interesting year.
Okay. Okay. Maybe that's.
I combine, let's say, Ray Dalio with the fourth turning, and let's say more people who are from let's say the mystical fields, not the scientific, rational world. But it's very interesting that most of the people I follow for the last 10, 20 years, there's this convergence in 2025. So I'm excited about that. Cannot wait.
Great. Good. Well, maybe that's the note to end it on. 2025. We'll see a breakthrough in consciousness.
Maybe we can reconnect then. Maybe I was mistaken. Very likely, but maybe I was not mistaken. We'll see. I don't know.
No, yeah. Let's see. Well, that's the other thing. This coming back to your book, Exponential Organizations. One of the sort of key insights for me was that book of how we're not very good as human beings as thinking exponentially, right? And there's the example I think of Ray Kurzweil. When somebody's challenges him, they're not making enough progress on the sequencing the genome, and he looks at it, they're only 1% complete, and he says, oh no, that means they're halfway there, right? Because if in 7 years they're doubled, and so he could see that in another 7 years they were going to complete it, right? Because he trained himself obviously to think exponentially. So perhaps
that's interesting. Yeah, I think if you apply that to AI, let's say GPT, the transformer model, right? So if you look at that, then if you go exponential, where is this going? I have no clue, right? But it's fascinating.
But it'd be interesting to know what the doubling rate of, let's say, people who are getting kind of switched on, in terms of this consciousness conversation. What's the doubling rate right now, and is it on an exponential curve?
Yeah, it's hard to say, right? Because we are all in our own bubbles. So we are over identifying ourselves with that, right? As a trend. That this is selective attention and distortion and perception from psychology. So we have to be mindful. But if you look at data points, I check my sanity in two ways: building stuff in practice to test my assumptions, right? In terms of value, recruitment campaigns, whatever, right? Online marketing campaigns. And I test also using Google Trends and statistical data points, right? To see shifts over time, and social media mentions and the trends there, right? So you can get a sense of that, but I do believe it's growing. Yeah, I have a strong. Is it growing fast enough? Don't know yet, but as you said, it's exponential. So I think we are lagging behind of what we need to do for the planet at large. But because it might be exponential, and especially 2025, that might be a tipping point, right? Then we are in a better place because it's exponential. This consciousness shift.
Yeah,
I think that there's some that might be true. Yeah, I could vouch for that.
Yeah. Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much. What a tour de force you are. This has been very energizing. And I love your candor about your own journey. I've appreciated that.
Very welcome.
Great. Well, thank you. And so, in terms of people finding more about where what you're doing, and
just contact me. You can check me out on LinkedIn, whatever. Yuri van Geest @gmail.com. Or probably I know somebody you also know and do introduction, whatever. But I'm open for conversations, especially with the things I talked about. And let's co-create the future together.
Indeed. Yeah. Here's to a consciousness revolution. All right. We'll put the links in the descriptions. Thanks again, Yuri. Thank you.